Welcome back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. Today, I've got a good friend, Jay Connor. I've talked to Jay quite a bit recently as a part of a group that we both belong to, and this guy is smart. He's definitely been around the block. He knows what he's doing in real estate, and he's here to give us some of that wisdom and help us out with private money. So, welcome to the show, Jay.
Hey, Danny, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So glad to have you. Let's start like I always do. Let's find out a little bit about you and how you got into, interested in real estate and the whole story. Take your time.
Sure. Thank you, Danny. So my wife, Carol Joy, and we live here in Eastern North Carolina in a little teeny tiny town called Morehead City, North Carolina. Morehead City itself has only got 8,000 people. Our total target market area has only got 40,000 people. But we started back in 2003. I was actually raised in the housing industry. My dad was in the manufactured housing, or most people call it mobile homes, was in the mobile home industry all of his life, most of his life. And so I was raised in around the business of helping people get affordable housing. And in fact, he was the largest retailer of mobile homes in the nation up until the late 80s. But anyway, I was in that industry until 2003, when the majority of the financing for those products was gone. The industry fell out of favor of Wall Street. So most people aren't walking around with $20,000 or $30,000, which was the average price point on single wide mobile homes back then. So I just knew I wanted to be in single family houses and buy real estate and flip and all that kind of stuff. Back in the days of when I was in mobile homes, Carol Joy and I have got real good friends that live in New Bern, North Carolina, about 30 minutes up the road. And back in the early 90s, while I was still in the mobile home business, they bought this fixer-upper with the wife's daddy's money. He was a real estate investor down in Florida. And they flipped that house and made $30,000 in 90 days. And during that time, I was trying to make $3,000 on a single wide trailer mobile home. I said, whoa, if I ever get out of mobile homes, I know what I want to do. So the opportunity came along. And so we bought our first single family house in 2003. I did not know what I was doing. I was relying on my experience in the mobile home business, which does not directly relate to this business of flipping real estate. And so what did I do? Well, I didn't get the education that I needed. I read a few books. And what did I do? I looked in the Homes magazine, Danny. You're probably not even old enough to remember.
I do remember Homes magazine.
Back in the day, real estate agents and realtors and brokers, they had monthly publications of actual holding your hand magazines, and they had pictures of houses in there that came out every month. So I got the local Homes magazine, and I had read in a book, if you could find the nastiest smelling, nastiest looking house in your area, there might be an opportunity. Well, Carol Joy and my daddy would attest, I found it. So
You found the worst one, right? You found
it. Yeah, hey, look, it had been on the market for 9 months. It was a bank repo. It had been shown over 60 times with no offers.
Wow.
And I said, sounds like my house, right? So anyway, I bought that house for $50,000 with an unsecured line of credit. I had an unsecured line of credit of $250,000 at the local bank. I mean, back when we started in 2003, if you could breathe and fog a mirror, you could walk into the local bank and get an unsecured line of credit. So I had this money burning a hole in my pocket. I bought it for 50, put 50,000 of rehab in it. I got 100 in it. After repaired value at that time was like $140,000. Well, what do you do when it's time to sell a house? You list it with your realtor, right? That's what I did. And for 45 days, there was zero showings, zero showings. Now, it was in January and February, but this was a beautiful home. I mean, it was staged to the hilt. I'm going, my lands. So one of them books I was reading said, look, if you put an ad in the paper and you advertise owner financing, your phone will ring off the hook. Well, I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I wanted my phone to ring. So I put the ad in the local paper in the classified section. Our newspaper only comes out twice a week. We're in such a small area. So I put this ad in there that said owner financing. My phone blew up. I had to cancel the ad after the second run. And so this guy named Earl called me up, says, I want to look at the house. Well, you see, this house was located in not the greatest area of town, right?
That's what I was wondering.
If you went down one way, you went by some nice houses. If you came in the other way, not so good. I said to Earl, Earl, it's sort of hard to find, right? Meet me at the local Seco gas station and you can follow me in. So he meets me at the gas station. He follows me in down to the house. He walks around. He comes back. He says, I love this home. I'll give you an $18,000 lease option deposit right now. I didn't know what a lease option deposit was. I'd never heard of it, but he had. Well, my daddy told me if somebody offers you money, take it and you'll figure it out. So he wrote me a check for $18,000 on a lease option deposit. I didn't even know what a lease option was, but I was still an active mortgage broker at the time. Well, Earl had a mid score of 580. And I got him approved and I got him a mortgage and I sold that house for $139,900. And so we profited $40,000. And that was my first deal, not knowing what I was doing. So that was my first deal. That's my first deal in real estate in 2003.
Well, and it didn't scare you off.
No, I said, I like this $40,000, even though I had to find the buyer myself. But
well, you saved in the commissions, right?
Huh?
You saved all the realtor commissions.
Well, I still had to pay 2% because it was listed. But anyway, that first year we did 3 deals. Well, from 2003, that first deal, until 2009, Danny, I relied on the local banks to fund my deals. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything about terms and buying on seller financing and buying subject to the existing note. I for sure never heard of private money. Didn't know what that was. I'd never heard of self-directed IRAs or anything like that. So those first 6 years, I was relying on the local bank. Well, my lands didn't. I have a rude awakening in January 2009, those first 6 years. And I lost my line. I lost my lines of credit at the bank. And so that's where I backed into this world of private money.
So how did you do that? I mean, this is, you took away, I mean, well, first of all, what kind of rates were you getting from the banks?
Back 7%, 8% back then.
Yeah, 7 or 8%. And no, I mean, what kind of loan fees? I mean, no loan fees, right?
Oh, there was origination fees. I mean, there's always origination fees when I was borrowing banks before I was cut off.
Yeah.
You talking about the origination fees or the interest
rate?
Yeah,
just, if you had that line of credit and everything. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, it was around 7-8%. And of course there was origination fees on every deal that we did.
Okay. And then, so moving into what was the transition like? I mean, how did you even find, what made you think I'm going to find some private lenders? What
right. Well, so I called this very phone, right? This was prior to cell phones. So I had called up my banker. I had 2 deals under contract. This was in January 2009. And I called up Steve, my banker at the time, and I had 2 deals under contract. The projected profit on those 2 deals was over $100,000. I called him up. I don't know I've been cut off. I don't know my lines of credit have been cut off until I get Steve on the phone. I told Steve about the deals, which I'd had this conversation many, many times. And Steve tells me right there on the phone, well, we're not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore. And I thought to myself, well, I wish I'd known that before I put earnest money down. And back then you couldn't get your earnest money back. And so I hung up the phone and I had a decision to make. So I came up with a brand new mantra that day. And the mantra was, it's impossible for you to fail unless you choose to quit. You can't fail unless you quit. And quitting was not an option for me. So I called up my friend, Jeff, who lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time, and he was a real estate investor. I called up Jeff and I told him what had happened. I said, Jeff, I just lost my lines of credit and I didn't even know they were gone. He said, well, welcome to the club. They cut me off last week. I said, what are we going to do? He said, well, there's this fellow by the name of Ron LeGrand down in Jacksonville, Florida, that can teach us about private money. I said, what's private money? Jeff says, I don't know, but Ron LeGrand says we can get a lot of it. And I said, well, let's go. So that was my first real estate investing seminar out of dire need and pain. I didn't go to Ron's seminar to learn about all this other stuff in this world. I went to learn about private money, which he was still teaching at the time as part of his boot camp. So I went and learned about private money at Ron's.
He's a great presenter. He's just so much fun to watch.
Oh, I know. He's awesome. And so I learned about private money. I came back home. I put my private money program on steroids, put my program together. Because, in this world of private money, you're not applying for money. You're teaching people in your warm market or your expanded warm market what private money is and what self-directed IRAs are. So I started teaching people what private money was through my own connections. And in less than 90 days, I was able to raise over $2 million in new funding that I didn't have prior to getting cut off. So Danny, this world of private money and that experience of getting cut off from the bank, that was the biggest blessing in disguise I've had since being in this real estate investing world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 2 million. I mean, how many houses can you buy with that? I mean, that's a,
yeah. I mean, so back then in 2009, the median price of a house around here was around $175,000, $180,000. So that got me started real good.
Yeah, if you're flipping, you're recycling that money and doing more and more. And I'm sure some of those lenders decided to offer more, want to lend up more after they got those returns on those investments, and it just kind of grew from there, right?
They always have more than they say.
Well, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of some of that in just a minute. I'm curious as to what kind of rates that you were getting and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, so I got the same program I did in 2009. The reason is a lot of these private lenders we've been doing business with all these years, even though I still have new private money coming in, but I pay a straight 8% interest only, no points, no origination fees. The term of the note is either 2 or 5 years, 2 years if it's just investment capital, 5 years if it's retirement money, because we still sell some of our houses on rent to own and help people actually get a mortgage. But, some deals we can structure where we don't make any monthly payments. We just let the interest accrue and then we cash them out. Some of our private lenders need monthly payments at 8% interest only because they're relying on that for their retirement income. And by the way, interest only is a win-win. Interest only, if you're making payments, it's a win for the private lenders because if you're paying principal and interest, you're paying the principal loan amount down and they don't make as much money. And of course, if you're making payments, interest only payments are smaller than principal and interest. So it helps our cash flow as the borrower.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. And most of my investing has been through private lending, having those, I cherish the ones that would allow the longer term loans and allow the wraps and things like that. Because it did allow for some of the longer term investment stuff. So who did you approach when you first got into this? And then after that, I want to find out if you were to start over again, how would you approach finding people? And would it be the same?
Good question. So our very first private lender, so I came back here to town from going to the boot camp. I put my program together. I knew what the interest rate was going to be. And so our first private lender I approached on a Wednesday night at Bible study at church. So someone that knew me, known me a long time, I'd known them a long time. Today, I call it the indirect method. I didn't have a name for it when I was doing it. I was just doing it by intuition, if you will. And here's what we did. I walked up to this gentleman before Bible study on a Wednesday night. And here's exactly what I said to him. I said, I want to talk to you about something confidentially after church tonight, if you got a few minutes. So we sat down after Bible study. He came over to me. We walked down to a room in private. We shut the door. And here's in essence how the conversation went. I didn't ask him for money. In fact, Danny, did you know I've never asked anybody for money? I've never asked a private lender for money. I educate people on what private money is. And if they've got private money or investment capital, retirement funds, they're chasing me. I'm not chasing them.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I said to him. We got in the room and I said to him, I said, you know everybody in this town. You've been in the Rotary Club all your life. You've been an entrepreneur all your life. You're in business for yourself. You're connected. He actually was the Zenith television dealer. Now that tells you how far back that goes, right? That's prior to Walmart coming to
The ones
town.
where they were furniture, right?
That's exactly. That's when they were furniture. That's right. And so that's why, I mean, he put a television in every hospital room here in the county and everybody's house. I said, you know, everybody. I said, and here's what I said. I said, I have now opened up my real estate investing business to people I know and trust by referral only. And I'm now paying insane high rates of return safely and securely. And when you run across somebody, in other words, I need your help. I need your help. When you run across somebody that's complaining about how low interest rates are in the local 12-month certificate of deposit at the local bank, or they're complaining about the volatility of the stock market and losing money in the stock market, would you refer them to me? And I'll tell them about my program, about how they can earn really high rates of return safely and securely. I asked for his help. Well, of course, you probably know what he said. He said, well, Jay, what you got in mind? And I said, well, the interest rates depend on the deal and et cetera. I said, but are you saying that you might be interested? He says, well, yeah. He says, I'm sick and tired of the volatility of the stock market. And, we're only getting back then in 2009, you could actually get over 3% or right around 3% in a certificate of deposit. Did you know, Danny, right now, as of yesterday on Thursday, the USA Today paper published the average 12-month certificate of deposit is paying a whopping 0.17% in the nation right now, less than 0.25%. So anyway, I asked for his help. He says, well, what you got in mind? So he's interested. And he says, yeah, we're only getting like 3% in the local bank. And he says, what have you got in mind there, Jay? I said, well, what sounds high to you? He says, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6%. I said, well, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. See, I already had my program in my mind. I can pay you 8%. And he said, well, put me down for $250,000.
Mm.
So here I got $250,000 burning a hole in my pocket that someone's just verbally pledged to me that they will fund a deal. So I went and found a deal just as soon as possible. And so that was my first private lender, by asking someone I knew to help me spread the word.
I like that. I like that a lot. And you never know who anybody knows or what they've, what recent conversations they've had with people about those things. And it can be amazing, what comes of that. And it's really cool that you talked about going into it you didn't have it all sort of planned out so much as just following intuition of just talking to somebody. And I think everybody's got their own individual experiences. It's not taking that exact thing that Jay just said and going in and doing it that way. You'll find your way of doing it. But that's a good guide. It's a good example of how to do that. I personally would look for investment properties that were bought recently and look and see if there was some individual's name as the lender, and then reach out to them and talk to them. It's like they're already doing it, so I don't have to convince anybody of anything. Do you do anything like that?
Absolutely. So I started doing that simultaneously. When I started out, I hired my real estate attorney's paralegal to look for deeds of trust. Some states it's a mortgage, all the same thing, to look for deeds of trust and in public records with exactly what you just said, Danny, looking for individuals that have loaned money out secured by real estate. Well, I'm in such a small area. We found one person in 90 days. So
Wow.
I knew I had to find a better way. So we hired some pretty smart software developers and we created the private lender data feed. We've been using the private lender data feed for myself and my students for years. And we update that software every month. And we get about 12,000 transactions a month from all over the nation. And we get the private lenders' contact information, how much money they're loaning out on deals. We even get the interest rate that they're earning. And so we've got the process automated. Another great place to find existing private lenders. And of course, just so everybody knows, Danny, we're not talking about institutions or banks. We're talking about doing business with individuals,
Right.
just like you and me, loaning us their investment capital or their retirement funds, right? And so, self-directed IRA companies, they hold networking events. Well, the self-directed IRA company that I work with and I refer all my private lenders to, 70% of all those self-directed IRA account holders are looking to invest in real estate, 70% of them.
Mm.
And so my lands, I say, the more money you wallow in, the more money sticks to you. So go to the networking event, to those self-directed IRA networking events where you got people walking around with retirement funds looking to loan money out to real estate investors.
Yeah, they're looking for you there. You're not, you just stand there and say, you wear a shirt that say, I invest in real estate and we'll see what happens. But what do you do when so from your list, right? The list of, where the software is finding these individuals that are lending out money. What is the approach in contacting those people? And I would imagine that maybe they hear from people quite often, approaching them to do this. So how do you stand out?
Yeah. So I've got two letters. One is called the Fellow Investor Letter. I got two letters that we mail to them. So we don't pick up the phone and call them. We don't knock on their door. So I've got two letters that are mailed 2 weeks apart, and we're not asking for money. We're just introducing ourselves. We tell them we got their information from public records and that we're a real estate investor. And we've noticed by public records that you are also interested in real estate. And, I have to pass on deals every now and then. And please give me a call, because I found that the more we network with people that are, like-minded, we're able to send deals to each other. So these letters are written in order to just establish a relationship, in order for them just to, pick up the phone and give us a call. And about 10% of them do, right? The other 90% ignore the letters. But about 10% pick up the phone, give a call after we mailed out to. And now we start a conversation. You already know they're private lenders. And when they call you, you can tell them that you noticed by public record that they're loaning money out, and now you have a conversation.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, the key there is not to send one letter that's supposed to convince them. I mean, you can't really solicit specific money for deals either.
Right.
Right. So, and what are some of the other things to watch out for when you do reach out and talk to people? Like, what are some of the SEC, different things to watch out for?
Yeah. So, of course, now because the SEC rules, we actually can openly solicit. But if I openly solicit, I can only borrow from accredited investors. Right. So I don't want to be limited to only borrow from accredited investors. So I'm not openly soliciting. I'm just networking. I'm networking I'm becoming involved in the community, and I'm just telling people what I do. right? I teach them about private money. I teach them about self-directed IRAs. And now they're chasing me and asking me, well, how can I get involved in that? Right.
Yeah, it's great. So if somebody, you had experience, right? You were real estate investing for many years when you first started talking to individuals about uh borrowing money from them for these deals, or having them ask you to borrow their money, right, to do these
That's
deals.
right.
What if anybody out there is saying, I'd love to do that, but I've maybe not done a deal yet, or I've done, one deal. And is that something that I go to hard money first? What is your recommendation for newer investor?
Yeah. So I get that question pretty commonly. Someone will say, well, Jay, I'm a new real estate investor. Who in the world is going to loan me money? Well, there's two answers to that, or two different ways to understand it. First of all, the way we structure our deals, we typically do not borrow, and I teach my students, and I practice the same thing. I typically don't borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value of a house, right? And so there's a large equity cushion for the lender. And here's the bottom line: if the real estate investor or borrower does not pay the lender, the property pays them. So that's a rider downer. If you don't pay them, the property pays them, and they'll actually earn more money if they had to go down that route. Of course, the lender doesn't want to be messing with a house. They want to be, totally passive, but the lender is very, very well secured with a large equity. I mean, a large equity cushion, if you will. Secondly, if someone's brand new, I say, if you want to feel really comfortable, leverage your relationships. So do you have a mentor or a coach that you're working with and you're a new real estate investor? Well, if you have a mentor or a coach, then you have a business relationship with that very experienced real estate investor. So, my students that work with me and that I coach, I tell them to leverage your business relationship with me. You can truthfully say, me and my business partner have rehabbed 450 houses. I just happen to have done them all, right? But I'm working with my student, and I'm coaching my student on a deal that you should do or a deal that you shouldn't do. So we are working together on those deals. You can start out with hard money, but I don't recommend starting out with hard money if you can be using private money.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a good approach. And I remember in my beginning with my mentor, it was always, we would just use the combined experience of 20 years, and all 20 were his. But
same thing.
Yeah.
We got combined real estate experience of 20 years. Same thing.
Right. But whenever I started, and also I borrowed from that private lender. We split deals and got a start that way as well. Did some deals, and then we're able to use those as examples to go in and show, like, hey, here's some of the recent deals we did. And it is amazing. It's really interesting to meet somebody and see they're kind of wondering what it's all about if you'd never met them before. And by the end of the conversation, how excited they are. It's really cool to see, because like you said, it's like they chase you after the conversation. It's not you begging or trying to convince anybody to do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. So whenever you're working with private lenders, what kinds of documents do you need to have this all work out? Anything special?
Yeah, so the list is much shorter than a traditional loan. Like traditional loan, your closing package looks like that. When we're doing closing a deal with a private lender, there's 3 or 4 documents. So first of all, I always get a comparative market analysis. Now, if it's a big deal, 300,000 or more, I'm going to get a full appraisal, right? And so if the private lender wants to see the comparative market analysis for the appraisal, I'm glad to share it. Quite honestly, and to be frank, in my warm market, I've never been asked. They've never asked to see it, because trust, of course, is a big part of it as well. but I always get a current, at bare minimum, comparative market analysis from my realtor as to the after repaired value. But as far as closing documents go, you got the promissory note, which simply spells out who's the borrower, who's the lender, what's the principal loan amount, what's the interest rate, what's the frequency of payments, promissory note. Then you have the instrument that secures the note. So it's either going to be a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on the state that the property is located. That gives the lender the legal right to foreclose if the real estate investor doesn't pay. So you got a promissory note, you've got the deed of trust or the mortgage, you then have the insurance policy. So the property insurance policy, we're going to name the private lender as the mortgagee, just like the bank. They're getting the same protection as if you're borrowing money from the bank or you're borrowing money from a hard money lender. And so mortgagees, lenders, if there's a total claim or total loss, the mortgagee gets paid off first. So we protect our private lenders by naming them as mortgagee on the insurance policy. They're also named on the title policy in case there's any title issues down the road. And in all these years of using private money, we've never had to put a claim in on a title policy, but I sure would never buy a house without having a title policy. And of course, there's the closing statement, the HUD, or the closing disclosure, but the private lender does not get a copy of that because they don't need it, right? So the only thing the private lender gets is the promissory note, the mortgage, they get the original recorded documents, and they get a copy of the insurance policy and the title policy.
Nice, nice. And then after you do the deal, you make them payments, right? Whether it's monthly payments or everything's held until you pay it off, the interest accumulates, and then you pay it off. And at that point, what does the paperwork look like once you pay it off?
So when it's paid off, we pay off, one of two things happens. We either pay off the private lender, right? There's a payoff instruction letter that we have them sign for the closing attorney. Or if it's a small amount of private money, if it's $30,000, $40,000, $25,000, and we've used that money, say, in a junior position for rehab money and not purchasing the property, because we can have multiple private lenders secured by the same property. We just have to be careful about the total loan to value, right? So if it's a small amount of money, if we've got another house that I'm getting ready to rehab that I haven't started or whatever, we can do what's called a loan modification, specifically known as a substitution of collateral. And we can keep their note in play or keep their promissory note going. And we just change the collateral or the real estate that is securing that note. So we do a lot of substitutions of collateral because we have multiple deals going. I mean, after all, the private lender doesn't want their money back anyway. It's like, what are they going to do with it? In fact, if it's a new private lender, I hear it all the time. We'll call them and say, we're getting ready to pay you off. Well, hey, can't you just keep the money? Can't you keep the money? Right. So we keep, because we pay them off without earning money.
Yeah, they don't get that interest when it's sitting in their bank account.
Yeah. So in answer to your question, we either pay it off or we substitute the collateral and keep the note open.
All right. And when you pay it off, release of lien is filed and everything is good. Who orders the release of lien?
The satisfaction is signed by the lender, and then our real estate attorney releases it. Now, for some reason, we don't get that satisfaction or whatever, our real estate attorney can take care of the satisfaction as well, because they know that it's paid off and everybody's made whole. So either the lender signs a satisfaction or the real estate attorney just takes care of it.
Oh, nice. And I think this day and age too, with talks of inflation and everything, people are really looking to get their money into something that's going to be able to secure it safely, but give them a return and make it to where that money is worth more than if it's just sitting there because the value is going to go down.
Absolutely.
Inflation. So it's a really good time for this. And so I think you had told me about your book, and you were saying that you were going to do something crazy. I said, this is crazy. Why are you doing this, Jay? but he said he wanted to offer it free to everybody, a physical book, not just a download of a PDF or something. This is a physical book. You want to tell everybody about that?
Absolutely. So the book is called Where to Get the Money Now. Where to Get the Money Now. The subtitle is How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Traditional or Hard Money Lenders. Just released it a few months ago, and it quickly, on the first day of release, became an Amazon bestseller. I'm excited about that. So on Amazon, it's $20, but for your listeners, it's free if they'll just cover shipping and delivery. And they can get the book. I'll autograph it. We'll ship it right out. And they can get it at www.jayconner, and I'm with an ER, JAYCONNER.com/free book. Free book. So jayconner.com/free book. In the book, I teach and share my exact private lending program that we offer all of our private lenders. I teach the 5 steps on how to get private money in your warm market. I teach the 5 steps how to get private money from existing private lenders. I teach in the book how I do private lender luncheons. I've got scripts in the book and talking points. And so I cover it from start to finish on exactly how I was able to get over $2 million in less than 90 days, and how anybody that reads this book can achieve the same success on getting a lot of private money very, very quickly.
Wow, it's really cool of you to have that set up there where people could get it so inexpensively, and the value of that, and being able to use that over hard money, or not having the money to do deals. The opportunity that's provided by all the information that you've shared in this episode, and then also in that book. I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely, Danny. And I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this information on private money, and hope it makes a big difference in your listeners' real estate investing experience and careers.
Nice, nice. If anybody out there that is listening wants to contact you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, yeah. Just to reach out to me, just go to jayconner.com. And we've got training there at the site. We got contact information. You can call us up. You can email us. Jayconner.com with an ER.
ER, JAYCONNER.com.
That's it.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Keep in touch.
Will do, Danny. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem.